"I've been aching down there," the giant cowboy confessed to the black teacher, his voice cracking like dried leather as he collapsed against the schoolhouse door. The townsfolk saw only a brute. 6 feet of muscle they mocked as simple-minded, destined to break his back hauling freight until he died forgotten. But the teacher recognized something else in those desperate eyes. A mind sharp enough to cut through the lies this frontier town told itself. Two outcasts in a place that wanted neither, one dismissed for his color, the other for his size, now bound by a secret that could either destroy them both or transform an entire community. The giant's confession wasn't just about physical pain. It was about a truth so dangerous it could shatter everything. Can two men society has written off prove their worth before the town crushes them completely? Or will their partnership become the very thing that seals their destruction? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The morning sun cast long shadows across Dusty Creek as Elijah Thorne stepped off the westbound stage. Dust clung to his worn traveling coat. His leather satchel held everything he owned. 3 books, a teaching certificate from Boston, hope that felt heavier with each suspicious stare. Mayor Cornelius Pike waited by the general store. His smile never reached his eyes, the kind of smile that meant trouble was coming. "So you're the new school teacher." Pike looked Elijah up and down like he was inspecting livestock. "Town council wasn't expecting someone like you." Elijah kept his voice steady. "I have my credentials." "Credentials?" Pike spat in the dirt. "We'll see how that works out." The makeshift school sat on the edge of town, an abandoned barn with gaps between the boards. Elijah pushed open the creaking door. Dust motes danced in the filtered sunlight. 4 wooden crates served as desks. A cracked slate board leaned against the far wall. He swept the floor with his bare hands, arranged the crates in neat rows, wrote the alphabet on the board with a piece of white chalk he'd brought from Boston. At 9 o'clock sharp, he waited by the door. No children came. By noon, a small girl with pigtails peeked around the doorframe. Her mother yanked her away before Elijah could speak. The woman's face twisted with disgust. "Stay away from our children," she hissed. 3 days passed the same way. Empty chairs, hostile stares, whispered conversations that stopped when he walked by. Martha Dillon led a group of women past the schoolhouse each morning. Their prayers were loud enough for him to hear through the walls. On Thursday, 2 boys finally entered. Brothers, with dirt-streaked faces and patched clothing. They sat in the back corner. "Name." She whispered it so quietly he had to lean forward. "Sarah." That was progress. Across town, Silas Boone lifted another crate onto the supply wagon. His back screamed in protest. The pain had been getting worse for months. Sharp knots of fire that spread from his spine down his legs. "Mind the eggs, you giant oaf," shopkeeper Williams barked. "Break those and it comes out of your pay." Silas nodded. He'd broken 3 eggs last week. His hands shook when the pain flared up. Williams had docked his wages for a month. The other workers gave him wide berth. They always did. At 6 feet 8 inches, Silas cast shadows that made grown men nervous. They called him simple behind his back. Laughed when they thought he couldn't hear. He could hear everything. After work, Silas walked the long way home, past the schoolhouse where the new teacher worked. Light flickered in the windows well past sunset. The man inside hunched over papers by candlelight. Silas knew what it felt like to be unwanted. Sunday brought the town council meeting. Elijah sat in the back of the community hall. Every seat in front of him stayed empty. The council members took their places behind a long wooden table. Mayor Pike stood first. "We need to discuss the school situation." "What situation?" Councilman Bradley asked. "The teacher." Pike's voice carried across the silent room. "Parents are concerned about the quality of education their children might receive." "3 children," Martha Dillon called from the audience. "Only 3 children attending." "That tells you everything you need to know." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Elijah rose to his feet. "If I may address the council." "You may not." Pike's tone left no room for argument. "This is a discussion about community standards, about what's best for our children. I have taught in Boston. I have credentials from Harvard University. I fought for this country." The room fell silent. Pike leaned forward. "Fighting doesn't make you qualified to teach." "Then what does?" "Being the right sort of person." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Elijah sat down. His hands remained steady in his lap, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. The council voted to give him 30 days. 30 days to prove the school's value. 30 days to show improved attendance. Failure meant immediate dismissal and removal from town. That night, Silas's back seized up completely. He crawled from his bed to the floor, lay there until dawn broke through his single window. The pain radiated down both legs now, made walking nearly impossible. He thought about the teacher, the man who sat alone in an empty schoolhouse, who faced down an entire town council without flinching. Maybe someone who'd fought. Knocked twice. The teacher opened the door. Up close, his eyes held the same weariness Silas felt in his bones. "I've been aching down there." The words tumbled out before Silas could stop them. He pointed to his lower back. "Been getting worse. Can't work much longer if it don't get better." The teacher studied his face. No judgment, no fear, just careful consideration. "I might be able to help with that." Elijah guided Silas to a chair inside the schoolhouse. The giant man moved like every step cost him dearly. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool evening air. "Show me where it hurts." Silas pointed to his lower spine. The muscles there felt like twisted rope under Elijah's careful examination. Years of heavy lifting had compressed his vertebrae, created inflammation that pressed against nerve clusters. "I treated soldiers with similar injuries during the war." Elijah moved to his small collection of supplies. "There are herbs that can help reduce the swelling." He mixed willow bark powder with warm water, added a pinch of turmeric he'd traded for last week. The concoction smelled bitter but effective. "Drink this twice daily. The pain should ease within a few days." Silas accepted the cup with trembling hands. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you asked." The next morning brought new challenges. Mayor Pike arrived at the schoolhouse before classes started. 2 council members flanked him like hired muscle. "We've received complaints," Pike announced, "about inappropriate activities after school hours." "Teaching is hardly inappropriate. Depends on who you're teaching." The threat hung unspoken. Elijah continued preparing his lessons. 3 students had become 4 yesterday, progress measured in single digits. Pike leaned closer. "You have 26 days left, teacher. I'd spend them focusing on acceptable behavior." That afternoon, anonymous notes appeared around town. Warnings about outside influences corrupting community values, about the dangers of trusting the wrong sort of people with their children's futures. Martha Dillon organized evening prayer meetings. The topics focused heavily on moral purity and traditional values. Attendance was mandatory for any family wanting to maintain social standing. Meanwhile, Silas felt his back pain diminish for the first time in months. The herbal mixture worked better than anything the town doctor had prescribed. More importantly, Someone had treated him with basic human kindness. He began walking past the schoolhouse each evening, never close enough to be seen clearly, just near enough to ensure no one bothered the teacher after dark. On the third night, Elijah emerged as Silas approached. "The medicine is working," Silas said quietly. "Good. How's your reading?" The question caught Silas off guard. "My what?" Stepped backward. "I don't know what you mean." "Acetyl salicylic acid. You pronounced it perfectly in your head. I could see your lips moving." Heat flooded Silas's face. His secret felt exposed like a wound. People don't expect big men to be smart. People expect lots of things that aren't true. Elijah opened the schoolhouse door wider, an invitation without pressure. Silas hesitated, crossed the threshold. Inside, books lined improvised shelves. Mathematics problems covered half the slate board. The alphabet stretched across the top in perfect script. "My mother taught me letters," Silas admitted, "before she died. I kept learning on my own." "What do you read?" "Whatever I can find. Engineering texts, mostly. Mathematics. Sometimes poetry." Elijah pulled a worn volume from his collection. Advanced Mathematics. College-level material. "Try this problem." Silas studied the equation. His mind worked through variables and calculations. He wrote the solution in careful numerals below the question. The answer was correct. "Where did you learn calculus?" "Borrowed books from the surveyor's office." When he wasn't looking, Elijah sat heavily in a student chair. "You've been hiding this your entire life." "Had to. People see what they expect to see. Big man means stupid man. Challenging that just makes them angry. What if we changed their expectations?" "How?" "Help me teach. The children need someone who understands struggle, someone patient enough to work with different learning styles." Silas shook his head. "They'd never accept it. They don't have to accept it immediately, just long enough to see results." The partnership began in secret. Silas arrived before dawn to help prepare lessons. His understanding of practical mathematics impressed even Elijah. Word problems about building construction and land measurement, concepts that connected abstract numbers to real-world applications. The children responded immediately. Silas's gentle nature put them at ease. His enormous hands moved carefully when demonstrating writing techniques. His patient explanations broke down complex ideas into manageable pieces. School attendance climbed to 7 students, then 10, then 12. Parents noticed their children's enthusiasm. Kids who'd never shown interest in books suddenly asked for help with reading at home. Mathematics scores improved across every age group. But success drew attention. Martha Dillon began stationing herself across from the schoolhouse. She arrived each morning with a small group of women. They watched through the windows, counted students, took notes about teaching methods. "Something's beard. What kind of help?" "The kind we don't want in our school." That evening, Pike confronted Elijah directly. "You're exceeding expectations, teacher." "That makes me suspicious." "Success should be celebrated, not questioned. Depends how you achieve it." Pike circled the small room like a predator. "Some folks think you might have assistants. Unauthorized assistants." "I work alone." "Do you?" The question lingered after Pike left. Elijah knew their secret arrangement couldn't stay hidden much longer. The question was, whether they could prove their worth before discovery destroyed everything they'd built. 23 days remained on his deadline. 23 days to transform a town's prejudices or face exile from the only home he'd found since the war ended. Outside, Silas waited in the shadows, ready to help, ready to risk everything for the chance to be seen as more than just his size. The morning Silas stepped through the schoolhouse door in full view of Main Street, Martha Dillon dropped her market basket. Apples rolled across the dusty ground as she stared at the giant man entering the place where children learned their letters. 15 students sat in neat rows. They looked up at Silas without fear. Some even smiled. "Mr. Boone will help with mathematics today," Elijah announced. Silas moved to the slate board. His massive frame dwarfed the small space, but his voice remained gentle. "Who can tell me how many boards we'd need to build a fence around the schoolyard?" Hands shot up across the room. Children who'd struggled with abstract numbers suddenly engaged when problems connected to their daily lives. Silas walked them through measurements, explained how to calculate perimeter and account for waste, showed them engineering principles disguised as basic arithmetic. "You have to think about expansion," he said, sketching a simple diagram. "Wood swells in summer heat, contracts in winter cold. Smart builders leave gaps between boards." 10-year-old Tommy raised his hand. "How do you know that?" "Helped my father build bridges before he died. Learned that wood is like people, changes depending on conditions around it." The children nodded with understanding that went beyond mathematics. Outside, Martha Dillon gathered her fallen apples. Her mind raced with implications. The giant everyone dismissed as simple-minded was teaching advanced concepts to their children, teaching them well. That afternoon, she cornered shopkeeper Williams. "Did you know Silas Boone can do mathematics?" Williams laughed. "Silas can barely count his own fingers. I watched him today, teaching children about engineering." Session. "We have a situation," he announced to the gathered men. "Reports suggest our teacher is receiving unauthorized assistance." "What kind of assistance?" Councilman Bradley asked. "The kind that makes our children look smarter than they actually are." The council agreed to increased surveillance, daily monitoring of classroom activities, documentation of any irregular teaching methods. Meanwhile, enrollment continued climbing. 16 students, then 18, then 22. Parents couldn't deny the results. Children who'd shown no interest in learning suddenly devoured books. Mathematical concepts clicked into place with startling speed. Writing assignments demonstrated creativity and critical thinking. But success came with a price. Anonymous threats appeared under Elijah's door, crude warnings about overstepping boundaries and corrupting innocent minds. The messages grew more frequent as student performance improved. Silas found similar notes tucked under rocks near his shack, warnings about forgetting his place and acting above his station. "Maybe we should stop," Silas said during one of their evening planning sessions, "before someone gets hurt. Stop teaching children, stop helping them learn, stop making people angry." Elijah set down his lesson plans. "Fear makes people angry, not success. They're afraid of what our students represent." "What do we represent?" "Proof that their assumptions are wrong." The breakthrough came during a geometry lesson. Silas was demonstrating how to calculate the area of irregular shapes when a stranger appeared in the doorway. The man was tall and lean. Weathered skin spoke of long days under harsh sun. His clothes marked him as a drifter, but his eyes held intelligence and purpose. "Mind if I observe?" the stranger asked. "Classes are open to the public," Elijah replied. The stranger leaned against the back wall, watched as Silas guided students through complex calculations, listened as children asked sophisticated questions about practical applications. When class ended, the stranger approached. Name's Eugene Winslow. Heard interesting things about your school. What kind of things? That you're producing results that shouldn't be possible, given the circumstances. Elijah tensed. Another challenger. Another test of their legitimacy. Our methods are unconventional, but effective. Eugene studied Silas, who was erasing the slate board. Your assistant there. He's got real knowledge, not just memorized facts. Mr. Boone is highly capable. Where'd a man his size learn engineering principles? Silas turned from the board. Same place anyone learns. Books and practice. Most people around here assume size equals stupidity. Most people are wrong about lots of things. Eugene smiled for the first time. Indeed they are. Over the following days, Eugene became a regular presence. He arrived each morning with the students' thoughtful questions during breaks. His presence unsettled Martha Dillon and her surveillance committee. Another outsider, another unknown variable in their carefully ordered world. Who is he? Martha demanded during her weekly meeting with Mayor Pike. Claims to be passing through, but he's been here 2 weeks. Passing through? To where? Says he's looking for someone. Family member who went missing during the war. Martha frowned. What kind of family member? Younger brother. Lost track of him after some battle in Tennessee. The information felt important, though Martha couldn't explain why. Something about Eugene's interest in the school went beyond casual observation. Meanwhile, student performance reached unprecedented levels. 25 children now attended regularly. Parents from neighboring farms rode in daily to bring their kids to class. The mathematics scores alone defied explanation. Children who'd struggled with basic addition now worked through algebraic equations. Geometry concepts that typically challenged high school students became elementary exercises. Silas's teaching methods revolutionized their understanding. He connected abstract mathematical principles to physical reality, showed them how numbers governed everything from crop rotation to structural engineering. More importantly, he demonstrated that intelligence came in many forms, that patient explanation could overcome any learning difficulty, that every child possessed unique strengths waiting for discovery. But their success was creating enemies. Martha Dillon organized formal opposition, a petition demanding both men's immediate removal, accusations of using unnatural methods to corrupt young minds. The petition gained 47 signatures in 2 days. Mayor Pike scheduled a public hearing, a chance for the community to voice concerns about irregular teaching practices and inappropriate associations. The hearing would determine whether Elijah and Silas could continue their work, whether 25 children would lose the education that was transforming their futures, whether intelligence and dedication could triumph over fear and prejudice. 18 days remained on Elijah's original deadline. 18 days to prove that unconventional partnerships could produce extraordinary results. The battle for Dusty Creek's soul was about to begin. The public hearing arrived like a storm front. Mayor Pike stood behind the makeshift podium in the community hall. 47 signatures demanding Elijah and Silas's removal lay spread across the wooden surface. We're here to address concerns about irregular teaching methods, Pike announced to the packed room. Martha Dillon rose from the front row. Our children are being exposed to unnatural influences, mathematics beyond their years, ideas above their station. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Elijah stood to respond. Advanced learning is not unnatural. It's the result of proper instruction and dedicated students. Instruction from whom? Martha's voice carried across the silent hall. A man with no credentials in our community? assisted by someone we all know lacks the capacity for such knowledge? Silas remained seated in the back corner. Every eye in the room found him, measured him, dismissed him. Eugene Winslow watched the proceedings from the side wall. His attention seemed split between the speakers and one particular student in the gallery, a young man of about 19 who kept his head down throughout the debate. Pike called for testimony from concerned parents. "My son comes home spouting engineering terms," complained Farmer Morrison. "Talks about load-bearing structures and mathematical ratios. That's not natural for a 10-year-old. "My daughter questions everything now," added Mrs. Henderson. "Wants to know why things work the way they do. Says her teacher told her curiosity is more valuable than obedience." More parents stepped forward. Each complaint centered on the same theme. Their children were thinking too much, asking too many questions, learning beyond acceptable boundaries. Elijah listened to each accusation. "You're describing engaged, active minds. Children discovering their intellectual potential. Children forgetting their place," Martha countered. "What place is that?" The question hung in the air like gunpowder smoke. Pike banged his gavel. "Order! We're here to evaluate teaching methods, not debate social philosophy." But the debate had already begun. Parents who'd remained silent during the petition drive finally spoke up. "My boy reads every night now," said Widow Patterson. "First time he's shown interest in books." "Our Sarah can calculate crop yields in her head," added Rancher Coleman. "Saves us hours of figuring during harvest planning." The room divided into opposing camps. Supporters of the school faced off against Martha's petition signers. Voices rose. Tempers flared. Pike called for a recess. During the break, Eugene approached the young man who'd caught his attention. "You look familiar," Eugene said quietly. The young man's face went pale. "Don't think we've met." "Timothy?" The name hit like a physical blow. The young man stumbled backward. "Timothy Winslow, my little brother who disappeared during the retreat from Nashville." Tears filled the young man's eyes. "Eugene?" The brothers embraced in the corner of the community hall. 13 years of separation collapsed in an instant. "I thought you were dead," Eugene whispered. "Thought the same about you. When the regiment scattered, I just kept running. Ended up here eventually." "Under what name?" "Timothy Carson. Started over. Clean slate." Eugene stepped back to study his brother's face. "You're enrolled in the school, teaching me mathematics I never knew existed, showing me how numbers connect to everything around us." Eugene looked across the room at Silas. "He's that gifted?" "More than gifted. He's patient, kind, treats every student like they matter." "And the other teacher?" "Saved my life. Gave me hope when I had none left." The hearing resumed with increased tension. Pike read formal charges against both educators: inappropriate methodology, unauthorized curriculum modifications, corrupting influences on impressionable minds. "The evidence is clear," Martha declared. "These men are teaching our children to question established order, to think beyond their natural limitations." "God forbid," Elijah replied. Gasps echoed through the hall at his boldness. Pike leaned forward. "Care to explain that comment?" "God gave these children minds capable of extraordinary things. Using those minds fully honors divine gifts, or perverts them." Silas rose from his corner seat. The room fell silent as he walked to the front. His massive frame commanded attention. "May I speak?" Pike hesitated, nodded reluctantly. "You all know me," Silas began. His voice carried clearly to every corner. Know what you think of me. Big man, strong back, simple mind. Heads nodded throughout the audience. What you don't know is that I learned to read from my mother's Bible, studied engineering texts by candlelight, taught myself mathematics because numbers make sense when nothing else does. Martha Dillon's mouth fell open. Been hiding it my whole life, pretending to be what you expected, because smart big men make people uncomfortable. Silas turned to address the full audience. Mister, Thorne didn't make me intelligent. He just gave me permission to stop hiding it. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Pike banged his gavel repeatedly. Order! That's exactly what we're talking about, Martha shouted above the noise. Unnatural behavior. People acting above their stations. Eugene stepped forward from the wall. What if their stations are wrong? All eyes turned to the stranger who'd been observing for weeks. What if every assumption you've made about these men is completely false? Pike glared at the interruption. This isn't your concern, Drifter. Actually, it is. Eugene placed his hand on Timothy's shoulder. Because this school saved my brother's life. The revelation rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Timothy Winslow, Confederate deserter turned student. These two men gave him hope, education, and purpose. Timothy stepped forward. They showed me that intelligence belongs to... About Timothy transformed the community hall atmosphere. Whispers turned to heated discussions. Neighbors who'd sat together for years suddenly viewed each other differently. Mayor Pike struggled to maintain order. We're here to evaluate teaching methods, not family reunions. The family reunion proves the point, Eugene replied. My brother was lost. Broken by war. These men rebuilt him through education. Timothy stepped forward. His voice shook, but carried clearly. 3 months ago, I could barely write my own name. Now I'm reading advanced texts, learning mathematics that seemed impossible. Martha Dillon rose from her seat. Pretty words don't change the fact that unnatural methods are corrupting our children. What's unnatural about learning? Learning beyond one's proper place in society. The words crystallized the real conflict. This wasn't about teaching methods or student performance. It was about challenging the established social order. Elijah had heard similar arguments in Boston, in St. Louis, in every town where he'd tried to teach. Fear dressed up as moral concern. Whose place? Elijah asked the room. Who decides what each child is capable of achieving? Martha's face flushed red. Natural order decides. God-given limitations that shouldn't be challenged. God gave these children minds, Silas interrupted. Seems wasteful not to use them fully. Farmer Morrison stood up. My son's talking about building bridges now. Bridges? What use is that to a farming family? Plenty of use, Rancher Coleman countered. My daughter's new mathematics skills saved us $300 in seed calculations last season. The room divided more clearly. Practical parents who'd seen results faced off against those fearing change. Pike attempted to regain control. We'll hear final testimony, then vote. I'd like to speak. Every head turned toward the voice. Martha Dillon stood at her seat, but she wasn't the one who'd spoken. Sarah Patterson, the 6-year-old who'd been Elijah's first student, raised her small hand. Children don't testify at council meetings, Pike declared. Why not? Sarah asked. We're the ones going to school. The simple question exposed another assumption. Adults making decisions about children's education without consulting the children themselves. Widow Patterson stood beside her daughter. Let her speak. Pike looked around the room. No legal precedent prevented a child from addressing the council. Reluctantly, he nodded. Sarah walked to the front of the hall. Her small voice carried surprising authority. Before Mr. Thorne and Mr. Boone started teaching, I thought I was stupid. Couldn't read like other children. Numbers didn't make sense. She turned to shifted uncomfortably in her seat. You want to take that away? Sarah continued. Send us back to being afraid of learning? Other children began standing throughout the hall, silent support for their tiny spokesperson. That's enough, Martha called out. Children don't understand the larger implications. What implications? Sarah asked innocently. The question trapped Martha between honesty and social acceptability. She couldn't explain that educated children might challenge the social hierarchy that kept certain people in positions of power. Eugene seized the moment. Let me tell you what I've observed these past weeks. He moved to the center of the room. I came here searching for my brother. Found him transformed by education. But that's not what impressed me most. All attention focused on the former Confederate soldier. I watched that giant man teach advanced mathematics to children who'd been written off as unteachable. Saw him break down complex concepts into understandable pieces, display patience that would humble saints. Eugene gestured toward Elijah. Watched that teacher treat every student like they possessed unlimited potential. Create lesson plans that challenged minds while building confidence. He paused for effect. These men aren't corrupting your children. They're revealing what was always there. Martha could contain herself no longer. Easy words from a stranger who'll move on when the damage is done. What damage? Children who can think critically? Students who ask intelligent questions? Young minds excited about learning? Children who forget their place? The admission hung in the air like a confession. Eugene pressed his advantage. Whose place, Mrs. Dillon? And who assigned it to them? Martha's composure cracked completely. Some people are meant to lead. Others to follow. That's how society functions. Based on what? Skin color? Physical size? Family wealth? Based on natural order. Whose definition of natural? The philosophical battle was becoming personal. Martha looked around the room for support, found fewer allies than expected. Widow Patterson stood up. My daughter was ready to give up on herself. These men taught her she was capable of anything. That's not corruption. That's salvation. More parents rose to speak. Success stories poured forth. Children rediscovering confidence. Students achieving beyond anyone's expectations. Families strengthened by shared learning. The tide was turning. Pike called for the formal vote. All in favor of maintaining current teaching arrangements? Hands rose throughout the hall. Elijah counted quickly. More than half the room supported continuing, gathered her petition signatures and stalked from the hall. But Eugene wasn't finished. He approached the podium as celebrations continued around them. There's one more thing this community should know. The room quieted again. Timothy isn't just any student. He's proof that education can redeem anyone, transform any life, give hope to the most desperate situations. He looked directly at the remaining opposition. If these men can save a broken soldier, imagine what they can do for your children. The final argument resonated through the community hall. Even Martha's supporters seemed thoughtful as they filed out into the evening air. The battle was won, but the war for hearts and minds would continue. 6 months after the town hall vote, Dusty Creek transformed beyond recognition. The old barn schoolhouse gave way to a proper building, with glass windows and solid wooden floors. 43 students filled neat rows of actual desks instead of makeshift crates. Elijah stood at the front of the classroom, watching Silas guide a group of advanced mathematics students through engineering principles. The giant man's voice carried patience and authority in equal measure. No one questioned his intelligence anymore. "Remember," Silas told his students, "mathematics isn't about memorizing formulas. It's about understanding how the world connects together." 12-year-old Tommy raised his hand. "Mr. Boone, how did you learn all this without proper schooling?" "Same way you're learning it now, one concept at a time, with help from good teachers." Silas glanced toward Elijah. The partnership that had begun with desperate confession about back pain now operated like a well-oiled machine. Two minds working toward the same goal. Eugene entered through the back door. His daily visits had become routine since the hearing. Sometimes he helped with maintenance work. Other times he simply observed the educational miracle happening before his eyes. Timothy sat in the adult education section. At 21, he was the oldest student, but never felt out of place. Martha Dillon occupied the desk beside him, practicing her letters with the concentration of someone making up for lost decades. The town's former opposition leader had approached Elijah 3 weeks after the vote. Her request came wrapped in humility that surprised everyone who knew her. "Is it too late for an old woman to learn reading?" Elijah's response shaped everything that followed. "It's never too late to become who you were meant to be." Martha's transformation rippled through the community. If the most stubborn opponent could embrace education, anyone could change. Mayor Pike appeared in the doorway. "School. What kind of things?" "Test scores that shouldn't be possible, teaching methods they want to study, a partnership between educators that's producing unprecedented results." Elijah felt pride mixed with caution. External attention could bring opportunities or complications. They're particularly interested in Mr. Boone's background, Pike continued. Self-taught man with engineering knowledge equivalent to college graduates. Silas looked up from his student group. Recognition and formal education were concepts he'd never imagined applying to himself. "There's talk of offering him a position at the State Teachers College," Pike added. "Part-time instructor while he completes formal certification." The possibility hung in the air like morning mist. Silas, teaching other teachers. Sharing methods developed through necessity and refined through practice. After classes ended, the 4 men gathered in the empty schoolroom. Eugene, Timothy, Elijah, and Silas. An unlikely alliance forged through education and mutual respect. "State college position is a big opportunity," Eugene said to Silas. "You'd reach hundreds of future teachers." "Means leaving Dusty Creek during summer months and returning each fall with new knowledge," Elijah pointed out. "Students here would benefit from everything you learned." Timothy opened his latest mathematics textbook, advanced calculus that would have been impossible 6 months ago. "You taught me that growth requires stepping outside comfortable boundaries." Silas studied the faces around him. Men who'd believed in his potential when he couldn't believe in himself. "What about the school here?" "We'll continue thriving," Elijah assured him. "With or without either of us. We've trained local assistants, built systems that work. The truth was larger than their individual contributions. They'd created something sustainable, a culture of learning that would outlast any single teacher. Martha Dillon appeared at the schoolhouse door. Her reading lessons were finished, but she often lingered to help with evening cleanup. "Hope you don't mind the interruption." "Never an interruption, Mrs. Dillon." She held up a handwritten letter, her first attempt at correspondence since learning to read and write. "Wrote to my sister in Denver. First letter in 40 years. Told her about the school, about learning to read at my age." The letter represented more than literacy. It symbolized connection, communication, the power of education to rebuild relationships and expand possibilities. She wants to visit, see the school that changed me. More visitors meant more attention, more opportunities to spread their teaching methods beyond Dusty Creek's borders. Eugene spoke up. "Timothy and I have been talking about establishing a similar program in the next county. Place called Cedar Falls."
Their methods worked, but required dedicated teachers willing to challenge conventional wisdom.
"You'd need someone with formal training," Elijah said. "We'd need someone with your training." The implication was clear. Eugene was offering Elijah a chance to start fresh, build another educational program from scratch, apply everything they'd learned in Dusty Creek to a new community. Silas would study at State Teachers College during summers. Elijah could establish new schools during the academic year. Timothy would help manage day-to-day operations. Eugene would provide logistical support and community outreach. Their partnership was evolving into something larger than any of them had imagined. Martha folded her letter carefully. "Whatever you men decide, this school changed my life, changed this whole town." She was right. Dusty Creek bore little resemblance to the suspicious, closed-minded community they'd encountered months earlier. Children walked taller. Parents asked questions. Learning was celebrated instead of feared. The ache that brought Silas to Elijah's door had healed completely. Physical pain dissolved through proper treatment. Emotional wounds mended through acceptance and purpose. Intellectual hunger satisfied through unlimited opportunities to grow and teach. As sunset painted the schoolhouse walls golden, 4 men sat surrounded by the tools of transformation. Books and slates, numbers and letters, questions and answers. They'd proven that intelligence belonged to anyone willing to claim it, that dignity could overcome prejudice, that education was the most powerful force for social change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to change lives through learning. But tonight, they celebrated the simple miracle of minds meeting across artificial barriers, of teaching becoming learning, of strangers becoming family through shared purpose. The schoolhouse door stood open, ready to welcome anyone brave enough to discover what they were truly capable of achieving.